Hello, everyone. So, today we are looking to talk about traveling with kids. And if you are a parent and you have tried traveling and going on vacations with kids, you understand that this is a tough topic and likely have a lot of questions yourself. We have some excellent questions that have been submitted in advance that we'd love to go over. And then, of course, those of you who join live, we would love to answer your questions too. And I have to apologize because we've been having some tech issues for some reason. And so if you've gone through and decide to watch us despite that, we really appreciate it, and appreciate your understanding in all of this for sure. We have some questions that have been submitted in advance, so as we're waiting for people to join in live, we definitely can tackle some of those. And if you don't know who I am, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself as we wait for Sarah to get joined in here. But my name is Jillian. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and expert in child behavior. And Fly on the Wall Counseling is the practice that I founded to equip parents to confidently manage their kids' challenging behaviors and emotions. And it's been an honor and a privilege to partner with so many families and really just transform their homes, transform their lives in usually just about 12 sessions, which is really huge. It's fast, it's directed, it's something that lasts, it's the most efficient, effective means to change in your home, and it's an honor to be able to have that opportunity. And I'm excited for you all to meet Sarah as well. And she is the founder of TravelAble, and she works specifically with families who have kids with special needs to make sure that they can go on adventures, and she's going to tell us more a bit about that in a moment. And I'm really hoping that this time it lets me add her without any kind of fuss this time, because I don't know if it's our connection or what's going on today, but there's some resistance to this going on. So we're going to see if we can get her added here. All right, hoping that it works this time.
Yay!
Yay! Oh, good, wonderful, excellent.
All
Whew.
right.
All
All
right,
right.
third official time
Third
is a
time. Yeah.
charm, we'll
Very
say.
good.
Yes.
All right. Very nice.
Awesome. Well, I already went ahead and introduced myself, Sarah.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll give a couple caveats before we dive into the questions. All right?
Sure. So my name is Sarah Marshall, and my company is called TravelAble. And for the last 10 years, I've been traveling with my family overseas. We've lived all over the world, and my son is a special little guy. And so through those 10 years, I've had a lot of experience with traveling with a special kid and figuring out the ins and outs of that. So through that, I've developed a consultation process that I think that speaks to a lot of families, because it really takes them through: how do you pick a destination that's appropriate? How do you plan for that vacation? And then how do you really embrace the experience? And that's my mission, is to help families live more adventurously, have strategies to do so, and have extraordinary vacations, lots of good travel memories.
I love it. That's so perfect. And you guys, when I heard about Sarah, I knew I had to connect with her because we have the same heart. We want families to enjoy one another and to have those positive experiences. And so I love what she does, and I'm excited for you guys to hear about our responses to all of your questions, and hoping people will be able to come on back, and if not for the live video, of course, for the replay. But I do want to just go ahead and give a caveat right off the bat, you guys, that there are some things that can be handled in live videos, and there are some things that simply cannot. We need a little bit more of a direct one-on-one conversation with somebody to really make sure that we are addressing your needs well. There are some things that cannot just be answered on a Facebook Live video to make sure that you are going to be successful. And our goal as professionals is to make sure that you have successful experiences. And so we're not going to set you up to fail by giving you a Band-Aid answer on a live video. We may encourage you to reach out to us to make sure that we're helping you to the best of our possible ability. so that you get to thrive and get your needs met. So please know that as we jump on into some of these. And, I'm excited for you guys to also ask who are joining live. Tracy, excellent to see you. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And I'm sure we'll get a few more people as time goes on, and Facebook lets people know that we're live. So, so the first question that we are going to address is, what's an appropriate or tolerable amount of questions to answer to calm anxiety? And I want to give just a little bit of maybe context for this question. So I've been doing a bunch of posts all month long about travel with kids, just because 'tis the season with summer break. And so this person has a child who has some anxiety and asks a ton of questions. And so if you guys are wondering if your child is anxious or nervous about travel or the vacation that you're going on, if they're asking you a zillion questions, the answer is yes. With questions is anxiety, or rather with anxiety, questions do come, and that's because there's so much unknown when they're going on a vacation. You've done the research, you know what to expect. You probably even actually can visualize a lot of your vacation before you even get there. You also have had experience going on vacations as a child and as an adult, and so you have a lot of wisdom and life experience to let you know what to expect going into vacations and how to problem solve those things. But your kids are newbies. They don't know this stuff. Unless you've been traveling with them from day one, pretty much, or very early on, they don't know what to expect. And there's a lot of anxiety that can come from the unknown. And so when it comes to how many questions do I ask, I understand that you can't answer everything because there are a zillion questions that come up. But allowing that child, especially if you know they're prone to anxiety, some time ahead of time. So whether that's, before you're leaving for your trip, and then maybe every single morning when you're on your trip, to say, okay, now is the time for us to answer your questions. We've got 10 minutes to have a discussion, or 5 minutes to have a discussion, whatever you can tolerate, to have them ask their questions, and that this is the time. So that if they have those questions later on, you have things to refer back to. And of course, you can always say, hey, if you need another question time, then you can let me know. And when we get there, you can allot for that, so that you're not losing your mind as maybe you're trying to navigate things as well. But definitely is important to be addressing those things. If you don't, they're just going to keep coming with the questions. And it may take them a little while to get used to this idea of having a set time. But if you are consistent and you stick with it, they definitely can catch on. So I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that too, Sarah.
No, I think that's a great, one of the tools that my son's school used to use was something called a worry box. So we would always travel with a small, like a pouch or a little box, and give him like tokens or slips of paper. And if he had a worry and it wasn't question time, then he could put the chip in the box. And they would actually write it down when he was at school, but obviously on the road it's harder to write it down. Yeah. But that way, like, he knew we were acknowledging that he had a fear, but that we weren't addressing it. And then at the end of the day, we could say, okay, you have 25 tokens, whatever, in your worry box. What would you like to talk about? And we'd have a set time where we would address whatever questions that he had. Because, my little guy definitely suffers from anxiety, but primarily from schedule and that kind of thing. And so we have a lot of tools for, I know schedules is a separate question, so we can get to that.
Yes, we will get to that for sure. And I love that. Let me turn on a light here real quick. I'm sorry. So I love that because with that, even, let's say there's 25 tokens in there. How many of those is he actually going to remember, or a child is actually going to remember what that token was for? And so even that is really a great visual for them to see that, hey, there are 25 things in here. You didn't even remember what half of these were. And so those were really kind of like small problems that we could work through and get through. And look how brave you were that you were able to handle all of that on your own. So love that. That's really neat. Excellent. All right. So next one is, what do you do for consequences on issues you absolutely can't budge on? So, consequences is a big topic that I discuss with parents. I truly believe that things really need to be customized. You cannot just read a parenting book on consequences and have all of your questions answered. Um, what motivates your kid is going to be different from another kid, and whatnot. And when it comes to consequencing behavior in public and not in your home, things do definitely get a little bit dicey and more difficult. Um, there are certainly things that can't just be swept under the rug. If someone's being unsafe, or if they are being extremely disrespectful, or there's some kind of truly negative behavior that you would never let slide at home, that you feel like you really need to address, those issues do certainly come up on vacation, because kids are kids. And so I encourage people, we need to have a plan ahead of time before you even leave home. Here are the consequences that we are going to use and feel comfortable with in public. Here are the consequences that we're going to use and feel comfortable with in a hotel room or in a relative's house. There's more complications when you have grandma and grandpa there, or aunts and uncles, or whoever. Sometimes they feel like they need to chime in and provide their own consequences. So knowing how to deal with that and address that absolutely needs to be talked about and decided upon before. I tell people all the time, plan, 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 plan. You have to plan ahead, because if you don't, you're not going to know what to do, and the kids are just going to kind of take over in that incident, and you're going to miss out on a teachable opportunity. So when it comes to things you can't budge on, you guys know what your kids do. You know what misbehaviors they have. You know what struggles they have. So you can plan ahead of time what are the consequences that are actually able to be taken with us on the road, as opposed to maybe things that you do in your home, where if you have time out or time in or whatever you want to call it, break, you can't do those when you're out in public. So what are you going to do instead that will actually cause your kids to learn from whatever is going on, which of course is always the goal of a consequence. We don't want to just make them feel bad. We want them to learn from their experience and what's going on. So plan ahead, plan ahead. Yes, Tracy, you got it, girl. You need to have a plan. You need to think in advance. And so I don't know, Sarah, if you guys have some of those consequences or things that you've done before that you found helpful, but
yeah, I wouldn't
I don't
say
want to
that.
put you on the spot.
No, I wouldn't say that I'm the best in that situation. I'm learning a lot from you at this question.
I love it. I love
because
it.
because we tend to be a little more lax in Aiden's behavior plan when we're on vacation. Obviously, we want him to enjoy it. And we rather than we do a lot of reward system at home, but rather than using so much of the reward system, we do a lot of removal from this situation. So if he's totally misbehaving, then, as opposed to going into the museum, wherever he wanted to go, we go out and we find a quiet space and we sit until he can calm down, that kind of thing. Because he doesn't, there's a lack of understanding, he doesn't really understand yet the experience we want him to have. We are just allowing him to explore his own space and understand what he enjoys and that kind of thing. And so, if we really want him to get excited about it, he's not excited about it, his behavior is going to go down. And I can't help that. It's under his control. So by taking away his video game or whatever, it's not going to help him, because we set up the expectation he was going to enjoy it, and he didn't enjoy it. That's not his fault. So so we do a lot of on the fly discipline in that regard.
Yeah, and I want to make sure people know as well, there's a big difference between misbehaving or negative behaviors and meltdowns. So meltdowns, we're going to handle in a totally different way. Meltdowns means that your child is overwhelmed, they can't take whatever's going on, which happens a lot with kids who have disabilities. And so we don't want to necessarily consequence a meltdown or a child feeling overwhelmed. That's something that they can't help. But if we have a tantrum where it's willful disobedience and defiance, that's something totally different. And that's what we're going to want to use consequences for, as opposed to those moments of overwhelm that I feel like you're talking about, Sarah, where we just need to take them to a place where they can recollect. And again, plan ahead. When you go somewhere, where is your place? Is it the foyer area? Is it, near the grocery carts, wherever you are. I don't know, but find your place where you can have that kind of go to and not be panicking of now what do we do. So love that you brought that up. We could talk about like the meltdown versus misbehavior piece too. So this next one is what do you do if your child has a meltdown on a plane? So they're hitting, throwing, kicking, screaming, yelling. It happens. I've been on planes like that. I personally get it. I totally get that things happen, and I don't begrudge, but I know there are a lot of eyes and other people who do begrudge all of that. So when it comes to meltdowns, what we want to do is make sure that a child feels safe and secure. When a child is melting down, when they're overwhelmed, what we tend to want to do is put out the fire by saying all these beautiful, wonderful things to our children. Except for instead of putting out the fire, we're just adding extra fuel at that point, okay? Words, advice, whatever, is not going to pacify your child. It's probably going to increase things. So this is where it's really hard when you're in public with people, because then people are like, oh, they're not doing anything and they're just letting their kid act a fool. I would say maybe the number one tip that you need to take with you when you're traveling is forget about what other people think. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. If they allow themselves to get all ticked off and have their day ruined because your child struggled, that is totally on them. They chose to be offended. They chose to not understand. They chose to not have an open mindset that, hey, maybe there's something that this child is really struggling with. That's on them. That's not on you, and you need to prioritize what's best for your child in that moment. And sometimes that means being quiet or giving them the space to get out whatever it is they need to get out. We want to, of course, protect safety and security. So if there are safety issues with them hitting or kicking or anything like that, we want to make sure that those are handled. But when it comes to the meltdown, sometimes those kids just got to get it out, and we got to be there and support them and make sure they know they're safe and secure to help them through that. And I'm sure maybe, Sarah, you've run across this a time or two. Maybe?
Oh, yeah, definitely a time or two. But I think everything you said is correct. I mean, first off, you cannot let other people dictate how you react to a situation, because A, you're never going to see these people again. Who cares? And B, they don't control you, and their judgment has no reflection on you as a parent. Like, you're doing what you need to do. But as it goes back to planning, you can't plan for a meltdown, obviously, but what you can plan for are the tools that are in your back pocket for how to make the child feel safe. So making sure that you pack a lovey or a stuff, something that will calm them in your carry-on, making sure if they, like for Aiden, he has a noise sensitivity, so we always carry his ear defenders. Yeah. I just remember he was actually a pretty good flyer, but he was tube fed for a really long time. And we were flying from London back to the United States, and he was doing fine, and he fell asleep. And I tried to hook up his feeding tube while he was sleeping, and he got really angry. And when he screams, the feeding tube comes out, and there's like food flying everywhere. And there was like this businessman sitting next to me who was like trying to calm Aiden down, and it's like, stop. Like, we just ran up and down the aisles for a while. I mean, I picked him up. I removed him from the situation. We went into the back. This stewardesses allowed me to lay him down to clean him up on the ground of the galley. And once he was calm, then we could, run up and down. What things that would make him a little. But I had to understand that he was tired. I'd woken him up. He was probably in pain a little bit. So there's, you have to have a little bit of understanding for your kid, because they're going through something, and, you don't want to yell at them or anything like that.
For sure, yeah. Thinking of their perspective definitely can help you through that. And anytime you can distract yourself through that and not focus on the screaming, that is going to be helpful.
And it's really super hard. Trust me, it's super hard, especially when it's like high pitched and like in your ear all the time. Yeah. But I actually, and we might talk about this later, but one of the tools that I always use when they're screaming is to lower my voice so low that they have to stop screaming to hear me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that has worked significantly for Aiden. He'll scream a couple times as long as I continue to have my voice like really, really low. Aiden, I'm sorry that you're having this issue. And then he has to actually stop screaming to hear what I'm saying. So
Right.
that works for me sometimes.
Yeah, I love that. We tend to match each other's levels. And so if we can come in under, kids are more likely to come back down as well.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right. So, goodness. I want us to make sure that we don't spend too much time on this. And I will have to go and I probably got about 8 minutes or so. So screen time is a big topic. And for those of you watching, I definitely have a post on Fly on the Wall Counseling page that you can scroll down and take a look at. And I also have 2 big long videos about screen time in Restoring Peace to Parents. So if you're not in Restoring Peace to Parents, you need to check it out and get in there and you can watch those videos because they're very helpful. But when it comes to how do you handle screen time on trips, one thing that you have to take into consideration is, first of all, what have your habits been so far? Because you can't just go from, access all the time to no access or no access at all and tons of access. If we have a huge disparity in previous usage, that is going to cause some issues. And I have to say that pretty much all of my clients that I've spoken with and we've planned for their traveling and they themselves have said they want to not be so dependent on screens. When they have transitioned to less screens, they also found that their kids had less behavioral issues and less emotional issues as well. Screens mess with our circadian rhythms, so they mess with kids' sleep cycles. And they're often using them at night, like in the car or whatever, and so that can certainly cause some issues with sleep, which we know makes kids more cranky. And just screens in general are, everything that has to do with a screen, games, shows, etc. Those are all meant to light up a kid's pleasure sensor in their brain. And so when we ask them to stop, it's very, very, very difficult for them to stop. Adults in the room, if we could please think of our pleasure sensors being heightened and needing to stop, if you know what I mean. That is a very difficult thing to do and tends to make people really cranky afterwards, right? And so that's essentially what's going on with your kids. When we ask them to shut off screens, is their pleasure sensor has to be immediately shut off, and it's very difficult for them to transition. Time gets warped when kids are on screens, so it causes a lot of strife. People judge, or people are saying, oh, now we're not spending as much time together or whatever. I'm not saying screens are the devil and never use them, but again, we want to plan for them. And if we're reliant on screens to babysit or to get kids through situations, we have to understand that when we ask them to get off or when they don't have them, we're going to see behaviors and we're going to see pretty intense emotions. So Sarah, I know you definitely have some ideas on this too.
We don't have to dwell. I mean, I just have, I think what you're saying is correct. We tend to be a little more lax with our rules about screens, because I know that for Aiden specifically, the screen calms him. So on the plane, they now allow things to be turned on from the moment you arrive, as opposed to before you had to wait. And so that helps us transition. Yeah. And it also, I was just going to say another thing is that we limit the things he has access to on the screen. But one of the things that we encourage is him to interact with his environment using the screen. So taking a picture, making a video, that kind of thing. So that he's interacting with the environment, but he feels comfortable because he's Aiden, only likes, is calming when it's the screen. But I get, he also is crazy town when I take it away. So I completely understand.
Yes, and like I said, a lot has to do with previous usage. So, but I love that, using the screen actually as a way to interact with the environment as opposed to take you away. Because I think that's what parents get so frustrated about, is like, okay, we're at Machu Picchu and you are just scrolling through Facebook, like what, or Instagram, right? Because kids don't go on Facebook, they go on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. So, or they're watching a YouTube video of kids putting Lego sets together, right? Like, we are at an incredible place and this is what you're doing. So I love that idea of using it instead to interact with the environment as opposed to take you away from it. And certainly we can use it for transitions, but again, have a plan. What are we going to use it for? What are we not? So awesome. Awesome. All right, next one is, how do you handle messed up schedules while traveling? You don't. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, messed up schedules happen. You know, you're going to want to talk to the people if you are with people, because that often tends to be an issue. You know, people, when you get all sorts of families together, everybody has different schedules, and you're trying to mesh and mold all of those things. Find out what you think are non-negotiables for your family. If your kid needs a nap, your kid can take a nap. It's okay to assert to family, your kid's going to take a nap. If that's a non-negotiable for you, or bedtime, or whatever, you know, meals. If meals are going to be an issue, you can always bring snacks. You know, of course, we don't want kids living off of snacks, but if it's going to prevent a meltdown, let's prevent the meltdown. You know, and then maybe you don't have to get them a full meal or something when you go somewhere, as long as that's not something that's going to bother them. You know, or you share a meal with them, and they're happy because they had their snack, and then they have a small meal, and you're good to go, you're covered. But things are definitely going to change, and giving your kids a heads up as much as possible. I know Sarah made mention to like scheduling tips and things. Picture schedules are awesome for kids to have an idea of what their day is going to be filled with. If you don't have one of those and you're interested, I have one that I have put together that I sell for like $5, you guys. It's digital. If you want to reach out to me and get that, I'm happy to provide that for you. But having a heads up, letting kids know what to expect is going to definitely help with the messed up schedule. And so it might be that you need to review that the night before, and then the morning of, and then midday. And right, they need to have constant reminders, because it's not something that is just like, let me just think about what our schedule is going to be. Kids are not thinking about that. They're in the moment. They're having fun. They're experiencing things, which is great. And so we just need to make sure that we're reminding them and getting them on track of what to expect. So I'd love to hear, Sarah, what your thoughts are too.
Yeah, sure. So Aiden is very regimented and likes his schedule. So we travel. Fisher Price actually makes, it's like, I want to say it's like this big, a little whiteboard, and it comes in a carry case. And so we write the schedule out every morning, and we say this is at the times we're going to do it. And if there's a change, the beauty of the whiteboards, it's easy to erase, but we always include Aiden in the change. So, okay, Aiden, you know, it's now noon. We had said we were going to stop for lunch. Mommy and Daddy are interested in going on this ride. Would you like to go with the ride, or would you like to go to lunch? And he gets a little bit of control in whether or not he feels hungry, or whether he wants to try the ride. So that he understands that the schedule is going to change. Then we erase it and we rewrite it like so he sees that how the schedule has changed. Awesome. And that has been huge. And in fact, he used to need it all the time. And now the more and more we've sort of trained him to be more flexible in that way, he doesn't need it anymore. So, you know, as you involve the kids or whatever, I've found that as they practice it more and more, the less they need it. But one of the services I provide, just like you said, is when a client works with me, I provide them both a social story and a picture schedule that's customized to their vacation. So they can, if they use PECs, if they use a system, they can, you know, have the PECs that are specific to their vacation. Allow that, yeah.
Amazing. And Tracy, by the way, thanks for jotting notes for us along the way here. Appreciate that, and yeah, love that tip. That's excellent. All right, so the next one have a lot more to do with specifics around you know, traveling and whatnot. So I'm just going to read the next three, and Sarah, you can talk to maybe a couple of these things.
Sure.
But I'm guessing too, it would be important for anybody with these types of questions to reach out to you for a more one-on-one chat. Because these are pretty specific, and I'm guessing, like, depending on what their needs are as a family is going to change your answer. So don't feel like you have to provide exhaustive. So this will be our last little bit here, guys. So what do you do about car seats and boosters when traveling on a plane? How do you handle customs when your child has an invisible disability or won't answer questions? Do you need documentation? And then how can you be assured your child won't be separated from you on an international flight, or I imagine even just any flight in general too?
Yeah, so I'm going to say most of these questions revolve around the airport experience. And I want to tell everyone that there are 2 resources that you must take advantage of when planning your trip. The first is the DPNA. So D as in disabled, P as in persons, N as in needing, A as in assistance code. And when you book your air flight, you ask the airline to put the code on your reservation. It alerts everyone who will come in contact with you that you need extra assistance. And that is for all disabilities, hidden or otherwise. Anytime you need an additional assistant, DPNA. That's number 1. Number 2 is TSA Cares. TSA Cares, their website is online. And there's a 800 number you call 72 hours before you fly. And they will assign you a TSA supervisor that will escort you through security and to the gate. So if you have sensory issues or mobility problems and you need to get through without being wanded, they help you with that. Awesome. Now, Midway, if you're in the Chicago area, Midway is probably I think it was the first airport to have TSA Cares. So it's like the gold standard.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
But when you go to other airports, you might not receive the same level of service. I just want to put out that recommendation. So as for car seats, it is always recommended that if your child can't sit upright but is too old for a lap, that they be in a restraint of some sort. So either a car seat, or if you don't want to purchase an airline a compliant car seat, they make something called the CARES harness, CARES. It is a 5-point harness that hooks into the airport belt system and is rated for children from 1 to 6 or something like that. So if you need, and that just fits in your carry-on bag, very simple. And then, I always fly with my car seat, and when my son was still in a car seat, because I got wheels for it. So I would put him in it and I would wheel him through the airport. So I didn't have to chase after him or anything. And he loved going for a ride. You can buy a bag to put it in and check it. So you go down the jetway to get on the plane, you put it there, they check it, you pick it up on your way out. Similar to a stroller. Or you can buy a small booster, and I used to put that in my luggage. Those are some options if you don't want to bring your car seat. But you can, if you have an airline compliant car seat, fit it in, buckle your child in like they would be. If that's how they feel safe, I would suggest you bring it. So that's one. I always travel with a doctor's note. And regardless of diagnosis, make sure it outlines everything that they need. So for instance, my son had a feeding tube. We used to have to bring liquids through security.
Sure.
So I needed a doctor's note that outlined that my child, who was 10, he was 6 at the time, needed baby formula, because they won't allow you to bring formula in if the child is not an infant. So you have to have a note that outlines that the child needs the formula, whatever. That's good if they only drink one thing and they need something. That's good if they have liquid medication, and anything that you would need to go through security easily. I would bring a doctor's note. If you're flying, I know the one question had to deal with international flights. So when you're dealing with international flights, there are always going to be English-speaking people at the airport prior to customs, because you haven't entered the space of the new country yet. You're in this sort of void space.
Yeah.
You haven't actually entered the country yet. So if you are having trouble, if someone is harassing you, if you feel like the customs officials in the country you're traveling to do not understand what you need, you can ask for somebody from an American airline to come and help you out. You can also ask for personnel from the embassy. There's always a person from the embassy. I'm a former embassy official stationed at the airport, so you can always ask for help. They should not separate kids and children, regardless of what the media says. They're not separating kids and children, kids and adults. But again, if you have that doctor's note, that should be able to reflect that the child has extra needs that mean that you have to go with him. So if you get pulled into secondary, then the child would be able to accompany you without them trying to separate you that way. I would not be worried about it the other way. I would be worried about myself being pulled in and my son not my son being pulled in and me they're not going to ask the child any questions. They're going to ask the parents, so that's not a big deal.
Sure.
Was there any other question? I feel like I'm trying to get through them really quickly.
No, I think you did great. No, I think that covers it. And you know, I know some other people were looking for, you know, like what are some good places to go. That is absolutely something that you need to reach out to Sarah for, because she needs to know your specific family needs, desires, all of that. So definitely reach out to her. And if you're going on vacation and you want to have a plan of consequences and how to manage behaviors and all of that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We can do some kind of like mini package for you to help you come up with some of those ideas. Love customizing packages and whatnot for people. And of course, we'll give you a free consultation to figure out what that would look like. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in and watching the replay, because I'm sure lots of you are watching the replay. And any questions you guys have, throw them in the comments below. Feel free to share this video and any groups that you're in of kids with special needs, you know, parents of kids with special needs. We would love for you to pass this along and help as many people as you can, because that's definitely our heart. So thank you so much, Sarah. And
thank
I'm sure
you.
We'll be in touch. And
yeah, definitely.
we will hopefully hear from you all soon. Thanks, Tracy, for being here for the long haul, too.
And for taking notes. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I know. Awesome. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.